What's up guys, Qehzy here, bringing you guys another tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create these 3D white banners in Cinema 4D and Photoshop. You can see these are real nice, real bright, really catch the eye. I personally really like this style of headers or banners or whatever you're going to be doing. You can see I have a few colors here. It's really easy to change the colors of these, and you kind of get two-tone colors. You can see there's like two different greens, two different blues, two different pinkish purples. So yeah guys, this is a pretty cool effect or banner style, I guess. So let's get started. So first off, we're going to be in Cinema 4D. I'm just going to hide that. I'm using my own Lightroom right now, which is in my store. If you want to buy it, I'll link it in the description. With everything else I use in this tutorial, it'll all be linked in the description if you want to buy it. But first off, let's get some mode text, and we're going to align it middle. And I'm just going to copy what I did before. So text is just going to be there in this case, and we're going to kind of make it a little bit abstract. So let me actually bump up the size here, and the font I'm going to be using is called Airstrip 4. So let's go see if I can find this real quick. There it is, Airstrip 4. I bumped up the height to like 430-ish, and the depth I'm going to make 150. And then let's go over to caps. Let's go fillet cap, radius 2 for both, and 5 for the steps. And then you want to make sure you have your lines on. So you want to go to display shading lines. Make sure that's the one you have selected. Don't know what that first G word is, I can't say that. And then you want to go down in the caps tab to type and do triangles, regular grid, and then just bump up the regular grid to somewhere so there's like a bit of a grid, but it's not fully gridded out, if you know what I mean. So like this bit doesn't have grids. Just like make it a little bigger. You don't want a lot of segments, but you want a pretty decent amount. And then once we do that, we want to go to the text and press C on the keyboard, because we're going to get a little abstracty sort of with this text now. I'm just going to drag the Dare folder out and get rid of the mode text and the 1, because those are just pointless. And we're going to set up this text in kind of a neat manner. So I'm actually going to bring these out so I can see the paths, because we don't want to change the depth or anything with the nurbs. So we just want to change the size of the paths themselves, the spline objects. So I'm just going to resize it. I'm going to scale the D up a little bit so it's a little bigger. I'm going to go to the A. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And we're going to bring it up, align with the top, and then bring it over so it has its own little space. And then the R, we're just going to keep it the side, or the way it is, the angle it's at, but we're going to resize it down so it kind of fits in like a square, I guess. So like that works. And then the E, we're going to rotate negative 90 degrees. And then let's line up this corner. So that's pretty in line right there. Actually, this has to go up a little more. And then we're going to have to play with the size of the E. So let's make it a little thinner and a lot longer. So this, you can see it looks a little funky, but that's okay. That's kind of the look we're going for. Maybe I can actually make that a little taller so it's not as funky. I don't know, that works. It's pretty good. And then we want to just minimize those so it's just the nurbs now. And we want to go ahead to simulate cloth surface. Depending on which version of Cinema 4D you're in, it might say something else. And I've heard that this might not work with like R13 and below, maybe. I'm not sure exactly. So if this doesn't work, that's probably why. I'm in R17, by the way, so it's like, I think that's one of the most current versions. I don't know if it's the most current. But we're going to actually duplicate that 3 more times for each letter and drag each letter into its own cloth surface. And we'll just drag this guy out too, and then we'll put everything back in the folder later. But we can actually minimize this too for now, and we want to select all of them, and we want to go to subdivisions. We'll just do 0. Thickness, we'll do 2. And then let's go ahead to MoGraph Cloner. Again, let's duplicate it for each letter and drag them on in. Let's minimize it all, select all the cloners, and then set the count to 1. Alright, now actually the first thing we probably should have done was add the poly FX to all these. So we're going to have to open all these up again and go up to MoGraph, poly FX. You can just duplicate it a few times, and then you want to drag it into the actual nurbs itself, but you want to make sure it's below the spline. There we go. Now let's go ahead and select each one of these poly FXs. And let's go to MoGraph Effector Plane. And then we can just minimize the cloners. And then we can put everything back into the dir folder, or the text folder, or null, whatever you want to call it. And let's go to plane real quick. Just make sure you have a parameter selected. And go to where it's go to Y, and where it says 100, you just want to make that 0. And this is going to be the standard white text. So let's go ahead and add a plain white material. This is just pure white. There's nothing else going on. Just normal color white and nothing else selected. So that's what you want. And then the colored material I'm going to be using today is a gradient glow, which is in my materials pack. Again, will be linked down below. You can use any glow. This just happens to be a gradient, so I get 2 different colors in there, which is sort of what you want for the banner. It's really easy to add a glow. You just go into the texture. I'm not going to show that now, but you can just use any glow you want, and that should work. Now let's get the whole folder and actually center this a little more, because we made it a little abstract. It's not centered as much. And we'll center it just like right there. That works. Alright, now we want to go and duplicate this. And we'll actually just add the glow to this second one now. A while. And we want to go to the plane in the folder. And we want to go down to where it says Z. And we want to make that like 30 or some big number so it extrudes like this. You can see the higher you go, the more it extrudes, but we just want a little bit. So like around 30 is what I did. Actually, exactly 30 is what I did. And then we want to check rotation, and we just want to up it a little bit in each section. You can also go -2, but I'm probably just going to go positive like that. There we go. And then we want to select that whole folder, and in my case I have a camera up, so I'm going to get out of that camera real quick so I don't mess with how that is. And I'm going to bring that whole thing back behind the white part of the text. And actually that might be rotated a little too much this way. Just a little bit. There we go. So now we got a little bit of some abstract color going on in the background. Looks pretty cool. Not bad. Now let's duplicate this guy again. Let's select the plane, and this time we're going to get rid of the Z, so we want that to be 0. And we're just going to uncheck rotation. We're going to check scale this time though. We're going to check uniform scale and absolute scale, and set the scale to -1, -1. And then let's go ahead, select that whole folder, get out your camera, and bring it forward. It should be invisible right now, so you shouldn't be able to see it, but just bring it forward a while, so once we apply the effect, you'll be able to see it. Let's go back into that plane, and let's go to the last tab, which is fall off. And you can see there's a shape here that says infinite. If we select anything else, we'll be able to see an effect, and we want to use the sphere. And we want to change the location of where our sphere is at, so let's center it a little bit. And then let's scale it up a lot, like so. And I want to try to get it more in the middle, so this effect is applied on either side. So you can see the main middle part is white, but the edges have a little bit of glow with these triangular pieces sort of getting smaller, which is exactly the effect we want. So let me scale it up a little more so they're a little smaller, like that. There we go. And let me preview this for you guys real quick. There we go. There's the main bit of the effect. Like I really love the side bits with like the triangles and stuff. And this actually might be a little too far forward, so let me go check this out real quick. And I'm gonna bring it back to like right there. That works. And let's go back, and I'm actually gonna make the circle maybe a little bit bigger. Like right there, that works. Pretty cool. Now this is like an optional step, I guess, but it's something I did, so I'm gonna show you. Real simple. I went to the objects, I got a tube, and set it to +Z orientation, and I made it just a little bigger so it fits around like so. Let me actually get out of the camera and move it back now so we can see it. We're gonna try to center it with the text, so maybe like right there. Bring it up, and that might actually be too big. Let's just bring it down, and then we're gonna add some more rotation segments so it's more rounded, so like that. And actually we can make this probably a little bigger. That'll work. And then we want to go to fillet at the bottom, and we want to bring the radius down to probably around 4 or 5. You could probably even go smaller, but that should be pretty good. And then the segments, I'm going to make 5, and we're going to go ahead and just add a white to that. And then we're going to do the same sort of thing with having it explode, I guess, with the color around it. So let's go ahead and duplicate this guy. Let's press C on the keyboard, and let's add the glow. And then let's go through the same process we did before. So simulate cloth surface. Add it to that guy. Let's go ahead to cloner. MoGraph cloner. Set it to 1, and actually we got to make the cloth surface 0 subdivisions, 2 thickness. And let's get the polyFX, which I keep forgetting to add for some reason. Add it in there. Select the polyFX, MoGraph effector plane, and we're just going to do the same one we did before. So make the Y 0 and increase the Z. And then we can just go ahead and add a bit of rotation. Now since it's circular, I believe like no matter what you do, it's going to be like symmetrical, I guess. So it might look a little weird, but that's alright. Let's go out of the camera and just move this guy back now, because we want the white part to be exposed a little bit. There we go, that works. So that's sort of what we're working with, and the very last thing is to add the logo we're working with in the center, which obviously would be optional. In this case, I'm going to do it because I think it really pulled the piece together in the final stage. So let me go ahead and get the Dare logo. I believe it's this guy. Let me bring it forward. And we're just going to add some extrude nurbs. I'm actually going to just go ahead and duplicate that once and put each path in. And this is going to be like the same setup, so fillet caps, 2 radius, and we can do 5 steps, although this doesn't really matter. And actually, let's go ahead and increase the size a little bit, and we'll center this as best we can. It's a little hard to center it because of the abstractness of the actual text itself, but that's alright. And then let's increase the depth so it goes all the way through, so that's a little too far. But we'll do like 100, and then we'll add our glow onto this. There we go. You can also add some text at the bottom, like I added artistry for like the Dare artistry, but I'm not going to show that. You guys know how to do that, just adding MoGraph text, and then I didn't really play with the settings at all. But then we're going to select everything and go to the rotation tool and just add a little bit of rotation like that. You can see the Dare logo actually is sticking out a little too far. So let me go back, get out of this camera angle. Oh yeah, that's really far out. Oops. Select it and bring that back. Alright, sweet. And now we can just set it up, rotate it a little bit, and then we can just go ahead and save that to our desktop and render it out. Alright guys, now you have your render done. You can also make a second render, which is what I did, without any of the white parts and just the colored and just facing like straight on. I forgot to mention that, I forgot I did that. But you'll see how we incorporate that. So we have our normal render and then one with just color. And we want to go ahead and drag that into our header template or YouTube, whatever you're working in. And you'll notice this one fits really well, not the colored one, the one that we worked on fits really nicely, like centered here. You might have to move it up a little bit like that, but we just want to right click and rasterize that guy. And then we want to get this colored one, if you decide to make one, rasterize it. And we're just going to use this at like in different corners. So the first place I used it, I just put it over to the left, just dragged it over to the left side, had a little bit sticking out there, duplicated it, brought it over to the right side and had a little bit kind of sticking out like that, duplicated it again, rotated it, and then actually strung it out like that so it's a little longer and something like this, and had it at the bottom just to mix it up so we get a little more effect going on here, which looks pretty cool. And then that's basically it with that. Like, you don't really use any of it, you just use those little bits shooting off. So you could really use this general render. I made a second one just because why not. And the first thing then we want to do is add some cool brushes kind of poking out of this guy. So we want to go to the render, and actually let's be a little more organized. So our render's here, and then these three guys are next. We're just gonna highlight them, Command G, put them in a group, and just call this secondary or whatever you want. And actually let's go to the main render and create a new layer. Go to your colors actually, and we want to select our blue, our light blue, and our darker blue, or whatever two colors you're working in or working with. And let's go to our brush tool. And these are actually free brushes on DeviantArt, and the guy that makes these brushes makes a lot of good brushes. So if you want free brushes, you should just look through his profile. I'll link this brush pack in the description. I'll also be using mine later on, which you have to buy, but if you want, you can just use these. And I'm going to be using these a couple arrows that he has. So I'm going to select this like 90-degree angle arrow, and I'm just going to put it like right here, so it will make it look like it's coming out of this bit where the arrow is pointing now. And you can put these as much as you want throughout the actual render itself, but mine, I try to put it other places, and this is where it really looked good. And then we'll just get a second one here, use the brackets to make it a little smaller, and it'll be poking out right next to it. And then we just got to get the brush or the eraser tool and just erase it so it goes within that color. And I use the dark colors because you can see them better in the front. I know it's kind of hard, I kind of placed it weird. But actually maybe the light ones would work better, but you can use either or. I guess I'm using the dark ones. And then what we want to do next is go below the render and create another layer that was on top of it. I'm just going to drag that below and get the brush tool, and again use some of these angled brushes that this guy has on his free brushes, and we're just gonna have them poke out of the top there and maybe the bottom like that. Maybe even add them here and maybe like on the side, wherever you want really. Let me zoom out. Maybe I'll just put one right here, and you can again add as many as you want. I'm just going to add a few to kind of get the idea, so like that, and boom. And then we want to flip the colors and get the light color. And if we go in here and just rotate this little thumbnail so the arrow is pointing down, it'll now switch the angle, and we want to use the light color and do the same thing. And since the light color is not as visible, it won't make a very visible X, which can look kind of stupid at some points, but it should look alright with the contrasting colors. So you can use those angled ones. I then used my own brush pack, and I have this cool triangular brush like this one, and I'm just going to resize it and sort of do the same thing. So light color a little bit to the top left and bottom right, switch it and use a little bit of the dark on the bottom left and top right like that, and then maybe some over there. It doesn't look real good actually. Maybe like that. There we go. And like that. And you can use it more if you choose to. It's up to you guys. You can do that as much as you want. We're going to be using more brushes later on. And the next step now is to do something pretty standard. I do this in most banners just to give a little bit of a color variation. And we're going to create a new layer on that layer we were just working on. And we're going to call it clouds, if I can spell. And then we want to go and click this black to white button to make our colors black to white. I know we have to get rid of the colors we just chose, and we're going to have to choose them later on. But that's whatever. And then we want to go to Filter, Render, Clouds. And then we just want to set that to Overlay and 35%. And you'll notice it probably won't do anything at all right now. Maybe it will, depending on how many brushes you use. But it really shouldn't have a big effect right now. And even its effect at the end is very subtle. Now we want to go to the original render and duplicate it. So Command J. And drag it to the very bottom, so the only layer below it is the background white layer. And Command T, and we're just going to make this real big, so it takes up the whole screen, or whole header. I forget the other term for it. And we want to make that 9 opacity. So now we have a little more going on in the background, which can look pretty nice. And then again, we want to go back to using some more brushes. So right on that layer we just created, we want to create a new one. And actually, this is another pack from this guy. I'll actually link both of these packs in the description. And I guess this one's called Move. Maybe, did I create this one? I don't think I created this one. I don't know. But it's this little triangular one, or squarish one. You can use whatever you want, really. And I use the light blue and just kind of put it in random places. And since it's the lighter color, you don't really see it. Like, I can hardly see it right now on the white banner. But once we add another brush effect, it'll really pop in some places. And I think it just looks pretty cool as like a side effect, I guess, in a way. Now we want to go below everything we've created so far. So the white layer, create a new layer. And let's go to the second color and get our blue again. So maybe I'll just select that. Alright, so now we have our both blues selected. And now we want to go back to the brush, but we just want to use a standard soft brush. And actually we're going to have to increase the size quite a bit, because we're going to be adding a little bit of some color overlays. So let's just go ahead and sprinkle these in here. So there's a couple for the light blue. Let's flip it, use some dark blue. And you can see with the clouds how like this is affecting it now. You can see how sweet that kind of outside look, or like the around the colors looks, with like looks very cloudy, which is something I really like. And we're just going to set that layer to 52% opacity. That might be a little too much. We can change it later on, but I'll keep it like that for now, because hopefully this should all work out. Now we want to go to the very bottom layer again, create a new layer, and we're going to be using some more brushes. So these are again some of mine, and you can probably use any real particle brushes, I guess. Hold on, let me see if I can find this. It's this one right here. Can I get a name on it? It's called Dude. Definitely one I created. And you can see this is kind of like a glass shards sort of look, like that. It's a really sick brush. Like, this is one of my favorite that I created. But we're going to do dark blue on either side, so like that. And then we want to create another layer, flip to the light blue, and we just want to rotate that 90 degrees again. Actually, 180. This is when I want to do 180. Okay, I screwed up last time. And so this is going to be backwards, so like that. And you can do either way, but this looks really sweet. And now you can see where that brush is coming into play on these guys. And I didn't place it very well. I probably maybe should have done it afterwards, but let me hide that. But you can see how this effect and how these brushes are really coming together and making this look really nice. And you can even decrease the opacity of this maybe a little bit, depending. I'm going to just decrease it maybe a little bit. I'll keep it in the 60s. And yeah, that works. And we're going to go ahead and add some more brushes. Now, it might be a little overkill at this point, but I'm just following what I did before. And I'm going to use another one of my brushes, which is this kind of, I don't know what to really call this, but it just looked pretty nice behind the actual logo. So I just centered it, placed it, decreased the opacity a little bit, and it was just another effect to have. And then the very last thing I did, besides adding maybe some more brushes, I don't know, it's hard to say. You can just play around with those brushes if you want. I duplicated the render. Actually, I selected everything, duplicated everything, merged it, and then I went to filter, distort, where is it? Twirl. Bumped up the angle. We want to get some crazy look here. Let me zoom out a little bit. So you get something wacky like this. You could probably even go up a little more to get something nuts. And I clicked OK. Brought that all the way down to the very bottom. Got the eraser tool. Bumped up the size. Erased the middle bits, so there's nothing sort of in the middle because we have a pretty good amount of stuff there. And then just decrease the opacity a little bit. Like that. So now we get this cool effect going on in the background that kind of swirls everything. And it's very subtle, but it looks really neat. I really like that. I didn't mean to click. And yeah, then that's basically it, guys. I maybe screwed up a few opacities or something, but that's basically the general idea. And then you can see at the top we have the hue and saturation, so we can now make this practically any color we want, and it'll look pretty good. Oranges still look a little weird for whatever reason, but any other color really works. We can just select everything. Come on. Select everything but the CC, duplicate it, merge it, duplicate it again, and maybe add a little bit of a Gaussian blur to radius, and then get the eraser tool and just erase some bits of this. So some bits are blurry. You can just click around like that. And then that's your final product, guys. Sorry if this was all over the place, but there's a lot to this banner and a lot of different layers and stuff. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you guys will be able to create your own awesome white 3D banners. And if you enjoyed, drop a like. 100 likes. I'll put the C4D file and the PSD in the description for you guys to use yourselves. Be sure to check the description for all those links that I mentioned earlier that'll be there. Subscribe for more tutorials, guys. Add me on Snapchat so you know what I'm doing, which is just Qehzy. Follow me on Twitter, which is also Qehzy, for me just chatting, talking about what I'm going to be doing, and asking for your guys' feedback. So yeah, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.